about. The two players down at the bottom in Kin and on the other side, Flurry, losing to Alutemu a little bit earlier, fighting for their life to stay in this weekend.
True enough. Kin and Flurry, well, Flurry we've only seen 1 week prior to this. I say only, but making top 8 twice out of 3 times is still pretty impressive. It's just that it pales in comparison to Kin's runs, to all of the consistency. Aside from Glory, he's the only other player that we've seen in top 8 all 3 weeks. And here we are again with the same 4 classes represented. We've been seeing Priest left up every now and then, but it seems like people have kind of landed on Mage being the 4th deck now.
Yeah, at least in this particular group of players. Maybe as we head into the finals and semi-finals tomorrow, we'll see some of the players that we saw on Friday going with different ban strategies. But I definitely agree, Mage looks like the most susceptible to the strategies so far. As, you know, in Mage versus Shaman so far today, I think we've seen it go 2-1 in favor of Shaman, unless I'm mistaken. And it did look pretty convincing on the times where they were able to take the win.
Yeah, true enough. I think Mage, maybe if you look at it in a vacuum, in terms of power level, it seems a little bit fishy to leave up, but specifically against the Murloc Paladins and the Shamans, especially if you're running into Highlander Mage, which have just the one Doomsayer to try and take back early tempo, it can definitely be preyed upon by these two decks.
It can indeed. I don't think there's anything too different in terms of the actual decks that we're seeing from both of these players, as we've seen them all play so far today. And I think we've seen all their mages. Although, actually, sorry, having said that, last series it was the Priest we saw from Kin instead of the Mage. So I guess we can take a quick look at what he's got rolling in his Mage deck. Getting that up now. It looks to be, however, just a very standard Reno Mage. Nothing like what Frosty was bringing with the double up on Puzzle Box and Dragoncaster and all that nonsense. It's just a fairly standard Reno Mage here.
What I would like to see, though, as specific takes on the fairly standard Reno Mage is just more anti-aggro tech for this specific week. I like the anti-druid techs, like Waste Warden, but also including things like, say, Rusty Raider or the Overconfident, or just these strong neutral cards that, you know, I think really speak to better design philosophy lately, because we're seeing just cards that were usually in the slots of filler now see play in actual decks.
Yeah, I think that Kin's done a pretty good job of taking his for anti-aggro. He's gone with the secret package, which a lot of players have been opting out of, with Ancient Mysteries plus Frost Nova and Ice Barrier. Oh, sorry, Flame Ward and Ice Barrier as the premium secrets available at the moment. But we'll have to wait a little bit before we see the Mage from Kin, because first of all, I believe he's lining up his Paladin, which is something we really haven't seen all too much of today, especially not going for it first, because in this format where you have 4 decks remaining but only have to win with 3 of them, you obviously can choose one deck that you basically just don't want to play. You don't even want to try to win with it because it's your weakest deck. And I think most of the players, have been opting to make that deck Paladin, whereas I think Kin is going with a slightly different strategy here.
It's slightly different, but it's also worth noting that Flurry is one of the players that's not actually including Hungry Crab in his Shaman. It's in the Paladin, but only as a one-of. And we did get word that Flurry is going to be running up his Shaman into the Paladin. So that might actually be a benefit for Kin.
Very possibly. Like you said, the real downfall of the Paladin up against the Shaman is Hungry Crab. But outside of that, I think that given the incredibly high amount of 1 and 2 drops, given that it's a Murloc deck in Paladin, you are fairly consistently able to lock down those early turns and start denying the totems. Up against Flurry's list, it may be a little bit harder. He's got a fair amount of early game stuff there, but he is also cutting some of that out for the Marsh Spawns that he's got in there a little bit later on.
Marsh Spawns, and of course the Magic Carpet, which I mistakenly attributed to Glory when it was actually Flurry and Dawn bringing that list in the top 8 this week. And I think it's a very good bring. I could see it be struggling a little bit if you're not running the Sludge Slurper package to generate even more 1-drops in the form of lackeys. And the unfortunate side effect of that is if you have to run Sludge Slurper, then you're walking into an opposing Hungry Crab. So I can see things going for both players in the positives and the negatives. I'm just interested to see how Flurry will try to dance around the crab, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult choice when it comes to Sludge Slurp. Personally, I feel like it's such a strong card in the deck that I think it's probably worth running it, even with the high amount of Hungry Crabs running about, because one, it's probably the best one-drop that you can run in Shaman at the moment, and two, it activates one of the other best one-drops in Shaman, in the Surging Tempest, which allows you to get the buff on the the overload there for +1 attack, which, to be honest, in this version of the deck has been very lacking. It's difficult to overload consistently when you're only really running Storm's Wrath and the Serpent Shrine Portal a little bit later on. That I really like still the inclusion of Sludge Slipper.
Yeah. I think interesting to note, though, that to make room for the Marsh Spawn and Magic Carpet package, Flurry has cut the Serpent Shrine Portal, probably saying that Magic Carpet acts as removal on its own. It is a completely different take on how to build the middle part of the deck, but wonder if it will help or harm him, particularly against Paladin.
Now, this is a weird choice for Flurry. The Guardian Org Merchant is not a good one-drop. You want to play it to attack something, either your opponent's minion, or to give your own guy Divine Shield and then buff it. But is it worth going for it here, purely to kill off anything that Kin plays on the following turn, to guarantee himself reflections on the Evil Totem?
I want to say yes, but even then it's not a guarantee, because Paladin we can see, point out a weapon to respond. But I think Flurry is not in a position to be able to play around everything. That's just the nature of these matchups. So I don't mind him keeping the 1-2-3 curve here and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I guess guarantee was a bit strong. Increase his chance of being able to hit the Totemic Reflection was a bit more apt.
Yeah. Aside from Coin Weapon, there's also the Henchclan Hogsteeds.
True.
Big deal. Now it's already back to the drawing board for Flurry, and it just feels so bad to be an aggro deck that doesn't have weapons playing against the aggro deck that does have weapons, because they can 2-for-1 anything you develop, and it is just so much lost tempo.
It's a weird choice here. Obviously, as you said, there's a little bit of extra burst damage that can come through from Henchclan's Hogsteed, but I think here, because it's exactly and only Henchclan Hogsteed, I think, that would allow Kin to take out a 4-health totem. Should he go Hero Power Totemic Might plus the Blazing Battle Mage? As long as he doesn't hit the 1-1, he's very happy.
I like it.
I
Good
like
recognition.
it too.
I thought you were about to suggest Flame Tongue Totemic Might even.
I definitely considered it. I think this is better, though, just because it gets the 2-2 on board, which allows you to fight back much more effectively.
I definitely agree. The 2-2 makes all the world of a difference here. That's just how these aggro matchups work. But also what makes a whole lot of difference is being able to land a health buff onto 3 minions. Yeah. Probably not possible without the help of this new Dormant minion for Paladin.
Yeah, I think the only real play that you'd consider there for Kin, everything else just opens you up for value trades way too easily.
Speaking of value trades, though, this is how Flame Tongue used to be in its glory days at 2 mana. Played between 2 minions, trading up or value trading, and then restocking the board.
So do you think it is Flame Tongue over the Totemic Reflections on this turn?
Okay, so it ends him up with 2/3 taunts? Doesn't seem particularly strong, because everything on the opposing board has 3 health, and you're likely to run into an attack buff for the next turn.
Yeah, I think, yeah. It's close, but I see your point. I think it's probably worth holding off for this turn.
And also, if you wanted to, ping the Guardian of Merchant and then trade into a 2/3, but that probably... Yeah, this accomplishes more, right? Just killing both the 1/3 and the 1.
Yep.
Well spotted 3.
I guess, yeah, I think it was probably worth going for the Orc Merchant there instead of the Kobold Lackey.
The draw from Kin is huge, allows him to just one-shot the Flame Tongue. And
absolutely massive.
Yeah.
Kin is obviously so far ahead in terms of value here. All he needs to do is make sure he doesn't fall behind to a huge totem swing. Or maybe a big Storm's Wrath play.
a bit curious that he played the McGurgle over the Tidecaller there because he has Scalar the next turn. But I can see the thinking from Kin that it's probably too optimistic to hope that everything sticks. So you'd rather just get 2-1, which can kill these 2/2/1s even with a health.
Yeah, I think that next turn Scale Lord probably wouldn't even happen. He just wants to dump all the Murlocs and then go for it the turn off. It seems very powerful.
With a decent push onto the board, the healing totem also pretty relevant, but this could be the turn where Kin starts to swing it back as he's just got so many cards in hand to Flurry's 1.
I imagine that he would probably want to prioritize killing off the totem, even though it is, as it currently stands, the significantly less threatening minion. Changed his mind at the last minute, but I think I would like to see the totem going off at the end here. He's so far in the lead. I think this is the one way he loses if he leaves that up.
Good on Kin for catching himself at the last second there. Flurry could, of course, still totem up and reflect that. But that does deny himself a Storm's Wrath for this turn, which would allow him to take a value trade over the Tidecaller. Everything seems bad. If he reflects a totem from the hero power, it's either 2/2/4s or 2/3/3s, all of which line up badly against the board.
None of it's getting it done. Can't even fit in the Storm's Wrath. Like, the healing totem's pretty good if he could take value trades, but there's just none to take.
Yes, if you storm 4/4 into 3/3, but it's not enough.
Yeah, that's the best you're gonna get, I agree.
And now Kin can do pretty much whatever the heck he wants. I would like to see just a very wide development onto the board. I don't even think he'll need the Prime. But it would be very cool to see both the Prime and the Scale Lord happen.
He doesn't need the Prime. Again, Gia, what is this all about need? You don't need the Prime. You want the Prime. It's cool.
Alright. But will the game be over before turn 8? Or they might concede before then? What then, Darth?
Then I'll be a sad boy indeed. I think I'm going to be a sad boy on this turn.
Well, it's slightly better than a War Axe. Just ever so slightly.
I guess. In that stubbing your toe is better than having your arm chopped off. They both suck.
Or breaking your arm and having to cast a full season of GM like that.
Imagine. Couldn't be me. Could not be me.
So he's got 7 mana worth of Murlocs outside of the Prime and 7 mana to spend.
Reporting for duty.
I guess Marsh Spawn is the big out now for Flurry, which is why he's carrying on playing. If he plays a spell this turn, it will be active next turn, so he can go for, what, 6 or less mana. He wouldn't even have access to Earthquake yet. Lightning Storm, maybe, can get him there. Maybe. Doesn't seem likely, though.
But we are going to get to see the Prime. It's your dream
Yes!
come true, there. He's just got to create a little bit of space first.
I don't even care if War Leader's better here. You just play the Prime.
Oh. Kin says nope to that, there.
I don't even care if this is lethal. This might be lethal. I haven't even counted. Still don't care. Okay, maybe if it's lethal, you take the lethal. The McGurgle Prime is so cool.
That I will agree with. Oh, we're talking Marsh Spawn into Lightning Storm exactly.
Yep.
and the Lightning Storm has to roll 3s on the War Leader and the
Reporting for duty.
7-3, and then he's got to run up into a Prime, so it has to be the other March 1 immediately. But nope.
That's not it. Very convincing win there for Kin. Pretty well played game overall, I think it's fair to say. There was definitely the best chance possible taken by Flurry to stick something onto the board. It had to be a pretty specific set of draws there for the totems to be cleared off one after the other, but Kin was able to get there.
Yeah, with the coin of the weapon, I think it's fair to say the game probably not ended, but
It was a
tilted
big deal.
at least another plus 50% in Kin's favor at that point. Yeah, that's just how it happens these sometimes with these matchups, and we will at least be not seeing that happen again for this series. But I would definitely say I'm more looking forward to seeing Druid and Mage be played, even though we've seen that on other weeks, because it seems that they have a lot more counterplay.
Me too. I'm glad to see the Paladin out of the way. The win is over with, and we can move on to the slightly more difficult decks to play. I agree with you, but before we can do that, we're going to let the players get ready, as per usual, for the rest of this series, and head over to a quick break before we come back with the conclusion of this series. Well met, and welcome back to the tavern here for Hearthstone Grandmasters. We are in the midst of our losers bracket match. Sadly, the player who loses this series will be out of contention to make it through to the semi-finals for this week. But for Kin and Flurry in this match, that does not mean it is the end of the world. We will be seeing them next week come the round robin. And luckily for them, we'll be seeing them in Division A, as every player in this group is guaranteed believe, to make it through to Division A. So it's really just about getting yourself that pride, proving that you deserve to be here for Kin, and also I think you could argue proving you deserve to be here for Flurry. He's one of the players who is more well known as a very popular streamer, I think it's fair to say, than a competitor. Obviously not trying to say that he's not a strong Hearthstone player, but when you compare it to the likes of Surrender, who I think is also a fairly popular streamer, but a competitor first, and Glory and Alutemu, who are doing very, very well indeed, I think it would be, the argument could be raised.
Yeah, I think it's definitely fair to say, especially looking at performances in GM, including last year. Definitely, Flurry was maybe outshined a little bit by his fellow Koreans. Not to say that he's not very good at the game, though. I, for one, really appreciated his off-the-wall brings from last week. I think the spot of Dragon Hunter for an LHS lineup is actually pretty well thought out.
I agree indeed, and he did deservedly well with it, but we can jump into this week's games now. I believe the next match is ready, and we're going to jump into Mage versus Shaman, a matchup that has gone pretty well for the Shaman, it feels like, overall. Maybe things will turn around here for Kin with Flame Ward kept in the mulligan.
Yeah, and the inclusion in the deck in the first place is not something you would always see in Highlander Mage, but again, for this week in particular, if you're leaving up decks that like to play smallish minions and go wide, and also in the case of Druid, then Flame Ward does just seem like, and he's also just got the Arcane Breath straight away with a dragon off the top. Gonna save it though for a totem. I actually think that's super smart.
Wow, that is very reserved gameplay. You could not have paid me to not kill that Blazing Battle Mage there, and then I would have probably lost the game. So well played there by Kid.
So always take payments there. Fireball there. It was a very quick pick, but I suppose the rest of them didn't really achieve much.
Yeah.
Overcharged and ready to fight! Job done.
Okay, still dominating the board, getting down the totem for reflections.
We were talking about how this could be a very good tech inclusion versus Shaman, but this might be a matchup where Shaman actually has the license to just not attack, say, all right, you have your Flame Ward, it's not going off until I say it's going to go off. So Flurry, in the meantime, can play a reflection if he wants to, and then wait until he can buff the health even more, or get a Splitting Axe turn before he procs it.
I wonder.
The thing is, he can already make 3 of these minions survive. Sorry, I should say, copy the totem here, and then go for Storm's Wrath, and then the 2 totems and the Tempest survive.
Right.
And it does get you a fair bit of damage to face. It's a little bit more aggressive. But like you say, maybe the plan isn't to go aggressive, but instead try and set up a huge Bloodlust later on.
I wouldn't hate it. He is going for the development, and if that arrow tells me anything, he's cashing in the damage now. And Kin, while he's going to be taking a fair chunk, he's probably going to be happy to see that. Because now he has Zephyrus Betrayal if he wants it.
True. It does not offer Immolation Aura, sadly, as that is not part of the basic or classic set. I think it's like part of the Initiate set or something for Demon Hunter. Whatever it is, it gets a little bit confusing there. There is no just 2-mana clean AoE that you can get here.
He could also just coin Zephyrus Lightning Storm, but that of course overload him for next turn. Probably not the cleanest, especially since he would want to coin the card too. I guess Cleave here is also potentially better because it has the chance of killing both totems. But it did Betrayal anyway.
A couple of interesting lines. The Storm's Wrath means that you could go for small minions in this turn and still have a spell played for Marsh Spawn next turn. Or it could just be Marsh Spawn Goblin Lackey to rush it in.
Again, it's a question for Flurry of what AoE he thinks is most threatening, and it turns out no matter which way he develops this board, it's all scary. Rolling Fireball, Blizzard, Reno deals with it. So in that case, the mindset has to be, all right, I'm not beating AoE. What's the fastest way I can kill Kin? And I think it is the small minion game plan.
Okay, I'm on board.
So he buffs the 3/2, rushes a rush lackey. Sorry, double buff onto the.
Little time.
No. You have to rush a rush lackey, even though there's going to be an extra damage spent.
I think the idea was just whether or not maybe you can afford to fit in a hero power instead of going for double lackey plus Storm's Wrath. But I agree. I think keeping the Marshborn active and going as aggressive as possible is probably the best chance for Flurry.
As of now, Kin doesn't have AoE. He's got kin0531. And Flurry is going to be at 4 mana. If you get something like Earthshock, this could be huge.
Yeah, Earthshock is very close to just lethal as it currently stands. Whoa. Wind Fury is close to good, but it's probably not the pick. I'm thinking it likely descends up as Feral Spirit, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, just for something to play alongside the Manatide next turn.
Obviously, Totemic Surge is a card that's actually in your deck, and those are more likely to be the correct choices. But I think he's just not likely to have that many totems, and as soon as board slips away, the game ends anyway.
Takes the Wind Fury, alright.
Okay. Could potentially be the surprise lethal with Bloodlust on the next turn.
Oh, the Reno off the top for Kin.
Forget about that.
His expression.
Oh, that is the draw there for Kin. Absolutely insane. And with Bloodlust on the top, that could have been game.
Okay, if we hadn't seen the Reno, it could very well have been Fireball, so to be completely fair, might not have been game, but
in my fantasy world where rules don't apply, that would have been lethal.
For sure, Flurry would have been in a much better spot if for any other top deck. It's just kind of been bad beats for Flurry today, huh? After that Winged Guardian, just Okay, so we could copy 2 totems this turn.
Give it Wind
Hope
Fury
that
and then
survive.
copy it. Wow. And then it can't attack twice. I mean, jokes aside, there was actually some consideration to go for that first with the Wind Fury. Oh my god. It's over, it doesn't matter. Because he would have got twice the chance of buffing with Bloodlust, but he would have just traded into both of them anyway. So I like saving it for the potential for maybe your opponent to slip up and take the win.
For sure.
No chance whatsoever, though, as Kin takes a very swift lethal. As, you know, the more we see in that matchup, the more it looks like that matchup is shaping out in one way in particular. The Shaman develops early on, the Mage falls behind, and then the entire game plan is just saying, please don't let them have AoE. Be it Waste Warden, Blizzard, Rolling Fireball, Flame Strike if they run it, Reno, Puzzle Box off of a Dragon Caster. There's a lot that can go wrong, and you just got to pray they don't have any of it.
Right. There's also that, I guess, more fringe scenario of they don't have the answer for the early game, which is Shaman just sticks a totem, runs away with that. Turn 2, turn 3, something like that. But we've seen a lot of Zephyrus come down early. We've seen Arcane Breastcat. And the only question I might have for Flurry is whether he needed to immediately proc the Flame Ward. I don't blame him for doing so, because at some point he would have had to get more damage in. And the hand didn't exactly lend itself to buffing health more. But I wonder if there could have been a different line.
Yeah, I think that game slipping away from Flurry wasn't so much a question of his mistakes for me. It was just a question of how well Kin was playing that. The real decision that absolutely made the game for him was not playing the Arcane Breath on 1. If he'd gone with that and killed off the Battle Mage, Totem would have stuck, Reflections comes down, a million lackeys, and all of a sudden Kin's losing the game. It was that one crucial play that you spotted at the start that just gave him the win. It was an inspired play.
Job's done.
Perfect. You just took away half my content for the next Mull It Over video, Darrow.
What are you on about? That's a top 5 play. Don't you dare take that.
It's early game, it's my segment. In any case, the matchup has reversed now. Flurry gets to play the Mage. He keeps Dragoncaster once again, has a bunch of expensive spells to pair with it, but no Dragon yet. But he also has Doomsayer to shore up the early game. And the question is whether he thinks he can get away with just a couple pings and a later Doomsayer, given that he doesn't really have plays for turns 3 to 5 yet.
Yeah, it is a bit weird. You really, I think in this matchup, do want to save Doomsayer for turn 3, because what you're expecting is Totem of some kind next turn, be it the just Hero Power, Evil Totem, or Coin Mana Tide. You definitely want to respond to that with Doomsayer. So I think I like just pinging the Battle Mage and passing here.
I can see it. The responses to a Doomsayer on turn 3 would have to be pretty specific. It either involves Kin buffing something that isn't a totem or having Flame Tongue plus something else specifically.
Kin now, I think, realizing that the threat is looming ever closer, does decide to go with this play, which gives him 6 available damage. Actually, yeah, I was going to say that allows him to clear. It does not. This is actually worse against Doomsayer.
It is. Got in the Surge instead of Might. It would have been enough, but this looks like Flurry's just going to run away with it, especially since he's gotten the Mana Saver off the top. It means the Dragon Caster can come down the turn after.
No Dragon. That is the one saving grace for Kin here. If there was a Dragon, I would be calling it 100% over. I agree. There's still a chance, I think.
To draw it. You know what? In this matchup, if you can just play a 4/400 empty board, even for 6 mana, I don't even think it's that bad. Because how's Kin gonna deal with it? Got one weapon. There's a dragon, though.
Okay, this would be a miracle if Kin can pull his way back into this one. And Hero Power Shield Bearer does not feel like that miracle.
Definitely not. Alright, what are you feeling here?
Probably Power of Creation, yeah.
I mean, what minions off this?
Oh,
okay, have double charge, why don't you?
That is, I think, actually the most powerful thing that Mage can do at the moment. Like, this is as good as it gets.
Outside of that card at 10 mana?
Sure. Okay, that can be more
Amazing
powerful.
Reno, Jara! Amazing Reno!
Either way, a very, very, very easy win there for Flurry. There was only one decision in the entire game, and that was whether to go for Doomsayer on 2 or 3, and I think he made absolutely the correct decision. It was a little bit difficult, but I think once you run through it and start to realize they're very likely to play a 0 attack minion on the following turn in the form of a totem, Doomsayer almost always gets to go off.
True enough. And there you have it. Flurry gets a win on the board, and you might say he had the perfect hand for it, but I feel like throughout the day, Flurry's been having some very, very bad beats. We were talking about Karma a while ago, so that was Karma for Possessi, was it? And now Flurry's getting the good karma for him.
Yes, he is indeed. And it
Sorry,
does
it was Alatemu, my bad.
Yes, with the Winged Guardian a little bit earlier on. But an important win there. It is admittedly with the Mage, which you and I can agree, I think, is one of the more powerful decks. He's going to try and transition over, I think, if I had to guess, to take a win with the Druid and the Shaman. I don't think he'll be trying to take the win with the Paladin, despite the way that Possessi started off the series.
Yeah, particularly because I think Possessi...
Kin, sorry, not Possessi.
I think Kin is running crabs, at least in his Paladin, so that's always kind of a detriment to running your own Paladin if you don't have your own double crabs, at least, or he has just the one. Anyway, the remaining decks still look pretty strong to me. I'm always a fan of Druid. Would be happy to see that come out.
Yeah, I mean, if Flurry thinks that Kin is going to go for the Druid here, he could maybe try to go for the Paladin, but having said that, actually, Kin just lined up the Shaman, so you can probably make the pretty good guess he's going to do that again, and instead wants to leave the Druid unplayed this series, so you need to try and find the best counter for Paladin, which, for the Shaman, sorry, again, is that the Mirror, or is that going for the Murloc Paladin?
I would say not Murloc Paladin, because, again, of the crabs, and it seems like it will just be the Mirror. So, Shaman mirrors, again, not a matchup we've seen all that much this weekend, surprisingly, despite it being left up pretty often. This one, I feel, can also just get very out of control early on.
It can indeed. It's fairly slow and then over very, very quickly because, as you pointed out, I think it's a very apt comparison to the old combo priest mirrors, where the player who pulls ahead at the start of the game is very likely to stay ahead for the entirety of the game. And there are two, I guess, main strategies that you can take to try and achieve that. There's the totem route, which it looks like Kin is going to be attempting with Evil Totems and Totemic Surge. And there's just the kind of zoo approach, where you can throw as much onto the board as you possibly can and try and take the win that way, which Flurry is attempting.
Yeah, and he can also just coin out 2 1-drops here. It looks like he reached for the Surging Tempest, but we did see on a different day, can't quite remember who it was, but Battle Mage coin Aug Merchant, I think that was from Dawn, was actually just brilliant. Still, though, this is more than enough attack stats to just maintain a stranglehold on the board, I would say.
Yeah, it's looking very powerful indeed. I guess consideration now for Flurry is how he approaches this next couple of turns. Sludge Slurper plus Lackey or Orc Merchant was obviously the most powerful play he can make immediately, but that locks out the totem route that he could go for with Mana Tide on 3, Splitting Axe on 4. And so I think given that he is already dominating the board very, very easily, I prefer this line.
Yeah, I think it was mission that he would maybe get to pull ahead even more and stick a minion. Ooh, that draw!
Oh,
The Mana Tide looked tempting, but this has to be better, right? You just clear the whole board.
absolutely insane. Serpent Shrine Portal, I guess, is the best thing that Kin could do, which is pretty good, admittedly, especially with the Rush Lackey to take out the totem. So maybe there will still be a little bit of back and forth here. At first glance, I was just saying that's blowout for Flurry, but I think Kin has a pretty powerful comeback mechanism here.
I think it still is blowout for Flurry. It's just a question of how he wants to trade. I like doing it this way because even if he puts 1 damage on the Surging Tempest, Serpent Shrine can still kill the Mana Tide for full value. And at the 1 health breakpoint, it makes things like Rush Lackey and the Bold Lackey have to commit extra damage.
Sure.
Is it War Axe
Pretty good
time?
swing, though. It's a pretty good turnaround, I think.
I think the War Axe could just get there.
Really?
Okay. If we think about worst case scenarios, let's say he just gets
Draconic.
bad lackeys here. I guess there aren't too many awful ones. Like underperforming Witchy and the Titanic strike me as not being very good. I just feel that if he's able to clear off this 3/3, maintain a minion, he's just ahead, right? And then he can clear off the next minion with the other swing.
I see your point, but on turn 5 now, or actually I was going to say turn 5, Kin can start going for Totemic Reflections on a hero power. He is overloaded for 1, however, so he would be down to just 4 mana. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too greedy with the Splitting Axes. I want to start hitting a load of totems every single time with it.
I didn't catch that Kin was actually hard running Vicina in the deck, which is not a usual inclusion, but kind of makes sense if you're already running cards that pay off of Overload.
Mm-hmm. It's a pretty good outcome there. It does allow for Titanic Lackey, the Tempest, and then swing both your guys into Vicina and Orc Merchant to take her out.
Yep, seems good. He can also fit
With
in a hero power.
Yeah.
He has to forego the Mana Tide, but again, we're seeing every matchup against Shaman, and it's not just in the mirror. We're seeing Druids and Paladins play this way as well. They spend resources to clear the early board, no matter how expensive it seems. It's the priority.
Yep. Pretty nice, easy play here.
So already for Kin, I think we're looking at some type of Ethereal Lackey out again. He himself, I think, is not running Sludge Slurpers, so they have to come off of exactly the Evil Totem. Bloodlust is 15 plus 8, 23. With the Totemic Surge, I think it's just too short of lethal.
Okay.
Just crazy, because Kin's at near full health.
Yeah, I'm carrying 4 off, I think.
I mean, it's still good though, right?
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
It either allows him to take value trades or just put Kin within range of a weapon, because Flurry's not running Serpent Shrine for him.
Yeah, I fully agree it's the Bloodlust on this turn. I think he's probably going to end up looking at trading, though. Overall, being 4 damage off lethal can be a very, very big deal. There's not that much in the deck to deliver lethal, especially when Flurry has cut the Serpent Shrine portals from his list.
Yeah, you're right about 4 off. I was counting the Titanic as a totem for some reason.
It's close enough.
Look at the patterns on it. It looks like the Series totem.
You shall not pass.
I mean, if you're arguing for Serpent Egg to be a totem, then surely Titanic Lackey also rock the double minion tags.
Identical to Taunt Totem. I literally can't tell the difference between them.
Well, while we were making these very stupid conversations, Kin actually has managed to stick a Manatide onto the board, and a not insignificant amount of attack damage.
True. It's getting very close on both sides, because now Flurry has also managed to stick a Manatide with a not insignificant amount of damage on the board as well.
The big difference, though, is Flurry's got the Carpet with a Sidekick and a Draconic. And I don't think that the Evil Totem will be sticking for additional lackeys, but this feels like it can still get there. It's kind of close, you're right.
Very, very close indeed. The Healing Totem, however, though, for Kin is absolutely insane.
Yes, that was nearly a wrong trade for Kin, though. He was about to trade off the Healing Totem instead of having that one kill the 1/1, but he fixed it at the very last moment.
Oh, it's so close! The Magic Carpet is so huge here, allowing to trade off most of the minions. Is it that with a Fairy Dragon? Okay, fair enough.
It's becoming a top deck war. We're getting to that point. So
Yeah. It's just you can play the Fairy Dragon immediately, but I guess you want to fit in the hero power and the sidekick either way.
So sidekick lands onto, I would assume, the 3/1.
I was going to say I assume the 2/1, because then you can value trade the Manatide.
Okay. Seems fine. Yeah, he just cashes in the Totemic Might anyway. All of a sudden,
very powerful.
The tides have turned. Kin is falling behind. Serpent Shrine's pretty good. That deals 4 damage. Not that it matters if it's going on to the 3/3.
Yeah, you have to do that.
Whoa! Oh! That's the biggest one!
Charged and ready to fight.
How is this so back and forth? This should be well over by now.
Oh, now it's over. It's gotta be. Look at this.
Dawn's Wrath is incredibly powerful here. You could probably just get away with ignoring the Blade Master completely here.
Oh yeah, for sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Not sure why he didn't kill that with the totem. It was at 1 health, right? Or maybe...
no, sorry, it was a 2.
Oh, my bad. Well, the Blade Master is huge, but Bigglewelt can just trade over it along with the Carpet. Everything survives. Flurry just runs away with the game. But that was probably the most back and forth mirror I've ever seen.
It really was, and I think well fought by both sides. The Magic Carpet tech, though, coming in huge here for Flurry. And I really like the strategy that he went for of just keeping a whole lot of 1-drops early on. But even despite that, he didn't let himself get tunnel vision too much on, like I said, the Zoo strategy of developing onto the board as much as possible. On turn 2, where he went for the hero power, I thought that was a nice way to set up for the axe as best as possible on turn 4.
So Flurry there, I know I suggested killing the Blade Master, but the more I looked at it, the more I like ignoring it and sending the 6 damage base so he could set up the 2-turn lethal. He's not got it anymore. Granted, there's very little way for Kin to come back onto the board. Wait, now he has it. Never mind.
Yeah,
That draw.
No way to come back here at all.
Very close to GG, and there you have it. 2-2.
Is this our first game 5 of the weekend? It feels like all the others have been flying by.
I think so, Derek. I wouldn't be surprised if it were.
Well, back and forth in terms of the game, and also, of course, in terms of the series here at game 5. It does mean now that with the Shaman out of the way there for Flurry, he's now on with his Mage and his Shaman, I believe, as 2 of the stronger decks, and is left there, as we can see, with Paladin and the Druid. I'd have to guess that Flurry is going to try and go... Actually, I'm not sure. I was going to say go with the Druid, but the Paladin, does it arguably have 2 decent matchups versus Kin?
It's the crabs, Derek. I keep bringing up the crabs, but Kin's got Kin's got his Shaman remaining, which actually doesn't have crabs in it. It's the Paladin, I believe, that has the double crab. So actually, maybe it is the Paladin for Flurry that can slide in and get that last win.
Yeah, taking a look at the Shaman specifically, once again, we can see there are no crabs in Kin's list here. So I think Flurry, if you go off the numbers that Paladin is favored versus the Druid, I think it'd be in a pretty good spot to go with the Paladin here, even though it is, in my opinion, far and away the weakest class in Hearthstone at the moment.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel about Paladin versus Shaman when neither player is running crabs?
Well, taking a look at the win rate here, in just straight up Paladin versus Shaman, we can see Paladin is fairly in the lead at 63%, I think.
Oh, wow.
In terms of the overall matchup. So I guess the idea is that Paladin can just get on board that little bit faster and start dominating the matchup before the totems can hit the board. And so based on that, I'm thinking, yeah, the Paladin seems like a good pick for Flurry.
All right. I would be surprised to see anything else with all of that data backing it up. So now for Kin, does he feel like he can get the win versus Paladin without any crabs to kind of cheat out a strong early game? Or does he have to go for just believing in the power level of Druid, which I think in terms of doing its ideal game plan, Druid tends to get there more often than Shaman.
Yeah, if I had to guess how this was going to go, I would say best guess Flurry on the Paladin, Kin on the Druid switching over. I mean, that may be why it's taken a little while here. He's choosing which deck he wants to queue up next. Obviously, he's gone with the Shaman twice already, but we did just get word that he is switching over to his Druid, but so is Flurry. Didn't want to deviate over to the Paladin. We are instead getting the mirror.
Well, they're believers. I love to see it. And, well, when we're talking about Druid mirrors, it's very important to check who of them has the Starfall. And I think between these 2 lists, Kin is heavily favored with his text because he's not running the bees. He's not running the heavy late game except for the Ysera. I tend to favor this, and especially with the Starfall in the mirror, just because it lends a lot more consistency to the deck. It's also got the Glowfly online already and is on the coin with Innervate and Fungal Fortune. So, yikes for Flurry.
Yes. Yeah. Would you say that puts him at a significant advantage?
More than significant, Derek. Puts him at an overwhelming advantage.
I think I would agree. I'm going to take a look at Flurry's list here for the Druid to see what counterplay he may have available, primarily in this form of Starfall, which he is not running, unlike his opponent. I'm looking at Flurry's best chance is Kin overdraws 3 minions here.
I was about to say, that seems like his best hope, but not a single one overdrawn. Okay, we do see that Kin's payoff spells after the Glowfly turn are the Wild and Soul of the Forest. Not quite Savage Roar, so he doesn't have the ability to lethal immediately. So maybe, because I expect to see Flurry pass his turn, then go for, gonna play a Panther. in any case, Overgrowth next turn,
Yep.
and then play the Overflow. Maybe he can find some miracles off of that.
Yeah, I think the only out here right now for Flurry is Kael'thas, because obviously this board is pretty much unanswerable for the moment for Flurry, especially when you factor in either the Soul of the Forest or the Power of the Wild, which will come down next turn. So I'd have to wager a guess and just say Overgrowth into Overflow into the most insane Kael'thas turn you've ever seen is probably the best chance for Flurry.
That's right. Flurry is still running the Kael'thas, whereas Kin isn't. So that gives him maybe that little slim shot of an out. So I'm looking at the Power of the Wild, and it seems very powerful. But
yeah, I think specifically because we're going into turn 7, 3 health on the Power of the World is a bit too susceptible to Bog Beams, which could become active now. And so even though Kin's first instinct was to reach for the Fungal Fortunes and go Power of the Wild, I overall prefer this line.
Sure thing. Okay, that's a comeback mechanism if I've seen one.
It is indeed. Ooh.
Whoa!
Whoa! He got the good cards.
But among these good cards, doesn't he need to play the Mount Seller and not Kael'thas? Because Kael'thas' big payoff is Forest Aid, which is development and not removal here. Whereas Mount Seller's development can double as removal if you get Griffins, or at least stall if you get Taunt.
We'll have to see, right? Maybe if the Gift of the World can come off the top, that might be what he needs to swing things back.
That's a roar off the top. And I do believe that is just lethal.
I think Flurry did an excellent job of trying to find his unlikely but possible out to win back the game. But overall, Kin got the hand that you need in the matchup. That is the dream of the dream. And Kin is able to take a very easy 3-2 victory in that final game to win the series.
And you gotta feel for Flurry. I think outside of that one Mage game where he had the Mega Nuts, I think it's been bad beat after bad beat for him. And luckily for him, though, he's earned enough points to still lock in for Division A. So if there's any week or any day to have bad luck, this is the day to have it and get that out of the way before round robin.
One thing I will say is that even though within the game, there was pretty much nothing or literally nothing Flurry could have done to win that game, it was just the dream from Kin. Outside of the game, I think queuing up the Paladin was maybe the better way to go. I'm not necessarily convinced at all, but it has a decent matchup, at least the stats would seem to argue against Paladin, and against the Shaman, and also okay versus the Druid, whereas the Druid, you're lining up a Mirror or Shaman, which isn't a great matchup either. So I think maybe I would argue a slight miscue there, but at the end of the day, Druid is just kind of a better deck than Paladin, so I can't fault him too heavily for it.
It might have been just a mind game going on, where if you are a believer in Druid and then you just expect it to be favored against Shaman, he'd rather queue that, and he just didn't expect Kin to queue Druid at all. Because I think if Flurry expected Kin to go Druid, he would never queue the Mirror, because a list like his seems a little bit unfavored in my opinion.
Agreed. But that does mean, unfortunately, as we can take a look at the bracket, that we're going to have to say goodbye to Flurry for this week. It's always a pleasure watching him play, whether it's him making the decisions or the little Remy sat on the top of his head, pulling the strings secretly. It is always a delight, no matter what he brings to the table. But now it is time for the final match of the day. It is going to be Alutemu versus Kin. We could have our first semi-finals here, where 3 out of the 4 semi-finalists are Japanese players if Alutemu is able to take the win. That would be insane.
Yeah, and on the flip side, though, if Kin takes the win, we would have an even split down the middle of 2 from Hong Kong and 2 from Japan. Also a great storyline to highlight, because Blitzchung is fighting for his life in this top 4, and would be a little bit sad to see if it's his own countryman to take him out.
Yeah, it would be a battle of the ages, to be sure. Still, as you said, I think the real storyline for me going into tomorrow is Blitzchung. It is the battle between Blitzchung and Chonsu at the moment for that final spot in Division A. If Blitzchung is able to win that next series and get through to the finals, he will go through. If he doesn't, Chonsu will go through. But we'll get into that a lot more tomorrow, because for today, it is just, like you said, a lot more about pride on the line, given that Kin and Alutemu are both guaranteed to get into Division A based on their very strong performances in the previous 2 weeks. It should be a good match. I think they've both been playing very solid Hearthstone over the course of today, even with some of the crazy results that have been rolled in there.
Yeah, I mean, among the players in APAC, of course, the first names to pop into the mind are probably Surrender and Rivius, those types of guys. But last year, as you mentioned, Alutamu just had very, very clean play, high level, ahead of most of the field, at least in the first season. And Kin, as a new Grandmaster, has been proving his stuff. 3 top 8s and a possibility to get a top 4. Really good stuff.
Very, very good stuff indeed. I always like watching Kin play ever since his breakout performance, at least to the global scene at Masters Tour Bucharest. But before we can do that, we, of course, have to give Kin a little bit of time to get ready after his defeat of Flurry. So don't go anywhere. The final match for Asia Pacific for today, Alutamu versus Kin, will come up after this short break.